Welcome to our second video in the 10 by 10 series. Today, I want to talk to you about consider your calling. At my previous place of employment, the board was intimately involved in the hiring of faculty and staff. When someone new would come in, they would sit around a board table. And inevitably, at every board meeting, there was one board member who always asked the same question to anybody who was going to work at our school. He would say, "Why do you want to do this job?" If they answered the question appropriately and said something like, "It's because I believe this is what God's called me to do. This is what God's gifted me to do," then his next question is, "That's great. Why do you want to be a teacher here?" And now I look back on that with fondness and think, what a great question. Does the mission and vision of this school help you fulfill your calling? I want to talk today in our 10 by 10 series about that very topic. As mentioned in our last 10 by 10 series, the purpose of these videos are to help provide information for our journey to distinction, as well as to pursue a unity of mind amongst our staff and faculty, and then also to prepare for the coming year. I want to start by showing you a picture of a puzzle. Now, I have this hate relationship with puzzles, this love-hate relationship, because I actually enjoy doing puzzles, but I hate what they do to me. Once I get started, I never want to stop. I just want to get it done. At our house, we have this date night with our kids. Each night of the week, a different child of mine gets to stay up later than all the rest, and they get to do what they want to do. The only rule we have is that it can't cost us money, and so they can go on a walk with us or play a game. We can cook something. We can read a book together, whatever it is. One night, my son brings down this puzzle that he had bought at a thrift store. And he said, "Hey, Dad, I want to do this puzzle with you." So I immediately have this love-hate relationship. I was like, "Oh, all right, that's good. I like this." But he hands it to me, and here's the puzzle he had bought at the thrift store. It's called a collage. That's the name of the puzzle. And it's about music groups and musicians and all this stuff, and you put them all together. But if you look at the puzzle carefully, there's no real rhyme or reason to it, except a bunch of letters that look almost random and scattered abroad. There's not like a picture there yet. It's just a mingling of letters. But overall, it's a puzzle, but it doesn't seem orderly, and it doesn't seem beautiful. It doesn't seem efficient or in any way pleasing to the eye to me. And so as we consider our calling as a school and as individuals, I want us to be more than just a school. This is just a puzzle. That's all it is. But it's a puzzle where things aren't consistent and it doesn't seem very cohesive and efficient. As a school, I want to figure out ways that we can become very unified, efficient, consistent, and cohesive. So in this 10 by 10 series, we're focusing on phase one of our journey to distinction. Some of you have already seen this. If you haven't, you need to know what this is. We are on phase one, where we are really discovering our differences, our competencies, our distinctives, and we are trying to make a difference through our distinctions. Someone once said, "You will never consistently behave in a way that is inconsistent with the way you perceive yourself." As a school, we have to know who we really are. In order to understand who we really are, we must start with theology. Now, today we're going to talk about a small phase of theology. It's almost like looking at a rivet up close, real close, whenever that rivet is attached to a 747 jet. We're going to be talking about one very tiny part of theology today. I want a campus full of people who come to work every day because they've considered their calling, and this is where they're supposed to be. Gloria Deo helps them fulfill the mission that God has for them. Because we're not just Christians giving an education, but we're a group of Christian educators giving a Christian education. Our vision and mission for the school has been laid out for us. It's in our founding documents. And I'm going to read these to you. You can read them. I know you can. I don't like to read PowerPoint, but I think it's important that we continually research and go back to our vision and mission. Our mission says Gloria Deo provides a biblical, classical education, equipping the whole student, heart, mind, and strength for the glory of God. Our vision is simple. God has created every person for a great purpose. In order for each student to reach his calling, Gloria Deo Academy encourages a collaborative effort between family and the school. This creates a community that cultivates learning and discipleship. At Gloria Deo Academy, we strive to integrate faith with education to develop the child's heart, mind, and strength. And then I have created a little tagline for our school, created for a purpose. Our school has been created for a purpose, and we get to build on the sacrifices that others have made before us. Each student that comes here has been created for a purpose, and we want them to understand what that is. But every faculty and every staff have been created for a purpose. So I want to get started today and talk to you about 3 different areas. I want us to consider the impact that theology has on each lesson that we teach, consider the impact theology has on teaching at GDA, and then consider the impact theology has on staying focused on the mission. So the first one we're going to talk about is considering the impact theology has on each lesson being taught. In our 10 by 10 series that we're involved with right now, it takes the idea of school and helps us consider our calling. Our mission is to help every student understand they were created for a purpose. And so with that being said, we have created a chart that allows us to look at this from a big picture standpoint. If you're going to write good, clear targets, you must start with good theology. And what I'm going to do today is actually combine theology and mission vision. Those two are going to be combined as one lesson today, because both those go together for us, for our calling here at Gloria Deo. If you notice the first 4 items on here, they're more about being, like a theology, a mission, a vision, philosophy, and enduring understandings. Those are more being kind of things. And then the last 6 are about doing. Most people want to jump right to the last 6 and say, let's start there so I can just get started on this. Anything that's worth doing requires someone to become something first. And God has a lot for us to do, but the more he has for us to do, the greater the impact of the doing, the more need for becoming. In some way, the theology portion becomes our worldview. It helps us understand our calling, helps us consider our calling, why we're teaching what we're teaching. Let me give you a few examples. Let's just take history for a moment. When someone teaches history, they can just teach the dates and the facts of all the great historical events that happen. Or they can say, wait a minute, this is God's story. And because this is God's story, I need to help my students understand how God has shaped history and how he has used people that he's called to do that. When we start talking and thinking through science, we need to be thinking through how creation itself reveals the invisible attributes of the living God. We can even take basketball for just a moment. And I have over on the right-hand side kind of what this means for athletics, because I know I have coaches on here who are watching these videos as well. But when it comes to basketball, whenever I coach basketball, my number one purpose was not to go in there and teach them how to shoot or dribble or run up their stats. My number one purpose in teaching basketball, well, there's a couple, I guess. I wanted them to learn community and how to work in community. But the other one was I wanted to teach them how to play the game of basketball, so it would open doors for them in wherever they were in life, where it gave them an opportunity to share the gospel. That was the purpose for me for basketball, is how do I teach them properly the game so that that game will be a vehicle for them in the future to share what God's put on their heart. You see, our theology is of vital importance. If we're going to give students a Christian education, we must start with incorporating theology into everything we teach. So if my philosophy of teaching logic is that every student understands that they need to be chasing after God's truth, then my lesson plans will incorporate those kind of things. My enduring understandings will line up with the vertical alignments. My scope and sequence will be laid out so that every student begins to understand big picture, that through logic, they should be seeking God's truth. And then obviously each clear target will have some aspect of that in there. Now, when we get to Deuteronomy chapter 6, we know that the Shema is here and addresses really the first form of what we would consider an organized path of education. It says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. So in other words, from as far back as recorded history can tell us, the training of children to know God and to love God was the mandate. Worship was always the goal. Academic opportunities were the means to reveal God's goodness, and it should have resulted in worship. See, when parents took walks with their children, they didn't take walks and say, hey, how'd you do on science today? Or how'd you do in English today? That's not what they did. They would point to nature and how creative and beautiful God was. GDA's name, literally, Gloria Deo, means glory to God. Our mission statement is to teach every child that they have a purpose on this earth. Because Gloria Deo Academy's mission is not to choose between worship and academics. Gloria Deo's mission is to worship God through our academics. And so the only thing I want to leave you with when it comes to the idea of theology is, have you considered your calling? Because that is exactly what we're trying to teach our students, that they were created for a purpose.